Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are strapping in for what might be one of the most ambitious deep dives we've ever attempted.
It's definitely up there.
We're looking at a really technical source. It's a commentary by an author named Louis B. Vega, and it's called a Rapture Summer Harvest, Eclipse Markers 2026 to 2033.
And this is not casual reading at all. Our mission for you is to really unpack what is essentially a master thesis. It's this synthesis of biblical prophecy, very specific calendar math, and, well, modern astronomy.
And what it tries to do is map out with, startling precision, the exact timing of the 7-year tribulation period.
Starting in 2026. That's the core claim.
Right. And the entire framework, the whole thing, it really rests on a pretty provocative and non-standard historical decision.
That's putting it mildly.
The premise is that the rapture's timing lines up with the summer wheat harvest type, and that becomes the anchor for this specific timeline. But to make it all work, the analysis has to reject the historical consensus.
It has to. It insists on a critical alternative date for the crucifixion, 32 AD.
Okay, so let's start there. We have to unpack that claim, because if that foundation is shaky, the whole 7-year structure it collapses.
It does. So why 32 AD? Most standard chronologies, they place the crucifixion in 30 AD. But the author here sees 32 AD as the only historical cornerstone that allows everything else, the calendar, the stars, to align perfectly over 2,000 years.
And the whole rationale for moving that anchor date, it comes down to figuring out when Jesus' ministry actually started.
Exactly. This analysis posits that his ministry did not begin in 26 AD. Instead, it argues he started in the fall of 28 AD.
Why that specific date? What's the significance?
Well, because that exact moment, October 31st, 28 AD, supposedly aligns with the proclamation of the Jubilee year during the Feast of Yom Kippur.
So it's not just a random date, it's tied to a major prophetic event.
Right. It's a difference between a 3.5-year ministry and a 4-year one. And if you accept that 28 AD Jubilee start, then, well, all the subsequent historical dates just fall into place. It makes 32 AD the only logical year for the Passover crucifixion, at least within this system.
That feels like the first major fork in the road, You have to accept that premise to continue.
You do. It's a huge deviation from standard scholarship.
Okay, so once that 32 AD anchor is set, the calendar math gets, let's say, aggressive.
Very aggressive. Using that year, the analyst then calculates the precise date of what they call the true Pentecost.
And their calculation lands on what exactly?
It would have been the 99th day from Nisan 15, which is the day the Israelites left Egypt. And this calculates out to a very specific solar date, July 23, 32 AD.
Wait, there's a really critical point here, methodologically speaking.
There is. This is absolutely key.
That 99th day calculation, it only works if they treat the Hebrew month as fixed, like tied to a solar calendar.
Right, not based on the fluctuating phases of the moon, which is what defines the modern rabbinical calendar.
So we probably need an analogy for that, because it's the engine of the entire timeline.
Okay, sure.
Think of it like this. The modern lunar calendar is like a clock that drifts a little bit every year. Sometimes it needs corrections, so a holiday might shift slightly on our solar calendar. This analysis just rejects that drift. It's saying the true prophetic calendar has to be fixed, like a mathematically precise celestial time machine that never drifts.
And if you use that fixed calendar, you can reverse engineer prophetic dates with what they believe is extreme accuracy.
Precisely.
So they take that fixed calendar accuracy and they cross-reference it with the Shemitah cycle.
The 7-year cycle of Sabbath rest for the Promised Land. They note that the current, internationally recognized Shemitah cycle runs from 2022 to 2029.
And why is that current cycle so important?
Because the analysis uses the end of that cycle to suggest, and very strongly, that the year 2030 must be the exact chronological midpoint of the coming 7-year tribulation.
So they're using a current cycle to reverse engineer a future countdown. It's an internal consistency argument. If 2030 is the center point, it just dictates the start and the end. It connects that historical anchor from 32 AD directly to a forward-looking calendar.
Which brings us to the proposed 7-year countdown itself. So based on everything, the 32 AD anchor, the Jubilee start, the 2030 midpoint, the timeline for the 70th week of Daniel is locked.
Fall 2026 to fall 2033.
And this is where the precision gets almost staggering. They give 2 specific dates that bookend this countdown.
They do. The start date for the tribulation is proposed to be October 31st, 2026. The end date is September 23, 2033.
October 31st, 2026. Why that date?
It follows the major fall feasts, specifically Shemini Atzeret and Simchat Torah, And the end date, September 23, 2033, well, that's significant for a whole host of reasons we'll get to, but prophetically, it's Rosh Hashanah, the start of the civil new year.
The insight here seems to be about the total duration. We hear 7 years, but the source is focused on the day count.
Right, it has to be precisely 2,520 days. That number 7 prophetic years of 360 days each, that is the critical measurement.
And if you start on October 31st, 2026, the arithmetic, it just works. The source states the exact halfway point, that's 1,260 days in Conlons, precisely on Nisan 10, 2030.
Which ensures the 7-year period is divided into 2 mathematically equal halves, a structural necessity for a lot of these prophetic interpretations.
The level of calculation is, it's impressive. But a clock isn't useful unless it starts running.
So what sets this countdown in motion?
Exactly. Now we have to shift into the real world. The geopolitical triggers needed to get us into that 2026 start window.
The source is pretty unequivocal here. It argues the church age is rapidly ending and that specific current events are not just precursors, they're accelerators. The whole system is primed.
And this is where it gets grounded in extremely recent history.
It is. It states that the specific sequence of events started with the Hamas war of 2023. That conflict is named as the catalyst, the thing that kicks off the instability needed for the next steps.
And those next steps are treated like a defined checklist of conflicts.
A non-negotiable checklist. The Hamas war sets up the Isaiah 17 event. That, in turn, is followed by the Psalm 83 war.
Okay, let's briefly define what the source means by those names, because they're not just numbers.
Sure. The Isaiah 17 event in this interpretation refers to the destruction of Damascus.
Okay.
And the Psalm 83 war refers to a much wider regional coalition, Israel's immediate neighbors engaging in a really decisive conflict against Israel.
And this sequence, this escalation of conflict, is essential. It creates the geopolitical void, the chaos, that allows for the debut of the Antichrist figure.
And his role, at least initially, is not to destroy, it's to confirm stability. His first major action is to confirm the covenant with the modern-day Sanhedrin.
And that act, in this view, is what guarantees a 7-year period that's initially sold as peace and safety.
Right.
Wait, hold on. Who is the Sanhedrin in a modern context, and why are they the specific group that has to confirm this?
The Sanhedrin is essentially the reestablished high religious court and governing body for Israel. Their buy-in is critical because this covenant is seen as an agreement about Jewish national life and, most importantly, about rebuilding the Third Temple.
No covenant, no start date.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No confirmation, no countdown.
And for the tribulation to even begin, the physical conditions for that Third Temple have to be met.
Correct. The geopolitical condition is Israel prevailing in those wars, stabilizing the territory. But the physical, sort of ritualistic prerequisite, according to the source, is procuring the ashes of the Red Heifer.
Which is a huge contemporary trigger.
A massive one. The source notes that the necessary Red Heifers are, right now, ready and qualified. And those ashes are required for the ritual purification of the priests and the Temple Mount site itself. It makes temple service imminent.
You know, what's fascinating here is the unique interpretation of the Antichrist himself.
Yeah, this part is interesting.
The source suggests he'll be a Solomon 2.0, meaning he won't show up as some terrifying villain at first, but as a grand statesman.
That's exactly right. The source draws this direct, deliberate parallel. Just as King Solomon dedicated the first temple and gathered the people after Sukkot to read the Torah.
A moment of great piety and national unity.
Right. The coming Antichrist will mimic that same grand action. This dedication and confirming will make him appear as a figure of incredible wisdom and order. It's pattern recognition, but applied to prophecy.
That use of historical patterns, the 32 AD anchor, the Jubilee, now the Solomon parallel, it shows a real commitment to internal consistency.
It does.
But now, let's leave the human sphere and go celestial. The source doesn't just rely on calendar math and geopolitics. It demands astronomical validation.
The signs in the sun, moon, and stars.
Right, so let's look at how those are used to confirm this 2026, 2033 timeline.
Well, if you're dealing with a divinely ordered timeline, the idea is that the heavens have to confirm the math on the ground. The analyst starts by pointing to historical precedents.
Like,
They cite the previous major blood moon tetrad, so 1949-50, 1967-68, and 2014-15. They note that these occurred separated by time intervals that align with the phi ratio.
the golden ratio.
The golden ratio, yeah. suggesting not just astronomical coincidence, but a recurring divine geometric signature being imprinted onto major historical events for Israel.
And so that same signature is then projected forward onto the 2026 to 2033 window.
Exactly. It establishes what they call a beginning, middle, end marker sequence using blood moons and eclipses that are tied precisely to Jewish feast days.
Okay, let's break down that sequence. What does the source predict for this 7-year window?
The beginning marker, which is concurrent with the start of the timeline in 2026, includes two separate triads of total blood moons. A triad is 3 in a row, so that's a powerful concentration of signs right at the beginning.
Okay, what about the middle?
The middle marker, which aligns with that 2029 geopolitical window, arrives with another triad of blood moons. This keeps the celestial clock ticking right up to that 2030 midpoint.
And then the end.
And then we reach the definitive end marker, which concludes the period in 2033, a full tetrad of 4 blood moons.
This is where the source delivers its
Yeah.
central proof point, right? Tying the historical anchor all the way back to the end date.
This is the linchpin of the whole argument.
We established the end date is September 23, 2033, which is Rosh Hashanah. The source notes this date also coincides with a partial solar eclipse.
But the critical piece here is the total lunar eclipse,
Yeah.
the third moon of that final 2033 tetrad. It occurs on April 14th, 2033. That date is Passover.
Okay.
And the stunning claim, the one that holds this entire framework together, is that this specific eclipse mirrors one that occurred exactly 2,000 complete years prior, on April 14th, 32 AD.
Wait. 2,000 years to the day, Passover to Passover, matching the precise 32 AD date that the author chose as their historical anchor.
That is the core argument. The analysis uses that 2,000-year correlation, which is, extremely rare and specific, as what they see as irrefutable astronomical proof. Proof that the 32 AD date was correct, and therefore 2033 must be the prophetic endpoint.
So the calendar math and the movement of the stars are being used to reinforce the historical hypothesis.
They have to for the argument to work.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've just extracted a staggering, internally consistent argument. It links a highly spectralized historical date, that 32 AD crucifixion, to current geopolitical conflicts, like the Hamas war, and then uses celestial math to lock down a 7-year countdown.
Starting in fall 2026. And this analysis, it succeeds because it doesn't rely on just simple guesswork. It's using specific historical day counts, calendar conversions, the phi ratio. It's all used to project this very definitive 7-year period.
The entire framework is a monument to predictive methodology.
It is. And it rises and falls on the validity of that initial 32 AD date and its specific 2,000-year celestial echo in 2033.
So the whole thing, the power of this commentary, it hinges entirely on proving that 32 AD historical anchor and then using that precise 2,000-year correlation to the 2033 Passover eclipse as the ultimate confirmation. I mean, what stands out to you about the sheer audacity required to link history, complex calendar math, and the motions of the cosmos into such a definitive 7-year timeline?